and welcome to Instalock Duelist. I'm Cupperfrag. I am joined by three festive faces here as we just come up to our pre-holiday season, or the portion of the holiday season. Kat, I've got Shadowdata, and I have got Dilly G, all labelled for your eyes to see. And let's get straight into this week's edition of what is going on in the Valorant scene. Let's start things off real hot, and I think the hottest take that Kat has ever had off his Twitch, or his Twitter account, I should say. Wow. Man, the female scene for Valorant, the events coming up for 2022. Let's talk about it. There's a lot going on right now. What's happening?
Well, some people, have said some things in regards to women. Well, okay, a lot of people.
Women in Counter-Strike specifically.
But someone by the name of Semler, he's a bit of a Overwatch caster, dude gets around and CSGO, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he had a take, Couple Frag. He had a take. Now, I don't think a lot of people agreed with him, but I do think he had a point. It was just said very, very poorly and very unconstructively. So essentially, he said that separating women into their own events is not ever going to develop into them competing in the T1 space because they will never have exposure to the right sort of competition. That's essentially what he tried to say. Right?
So let's pause it for a second before we even get any deeper into this. Sure. I agree that is kind of the base of what was put down. And you did mention as well, I think it was with good intent. I really do honestly believe it was just poorly delivered. Yes. It was just poorly delivered. Yes. But the impact that can have, and I think that goes to your point, it's atrocious. And for yourself as a caster, for you as one of your peers in the community, there has been so much backlash. So I think maybe it's been a bit of a reality check for players and for talent alike that Twitter, I'm just going to no brain, just type something. You can't do that anymore. You've got to be so careful. Yeah. And the points that were made off of it, for example, from what you put on socials, Chad, and from what you put, please break that down for me a bit. What was your counter argument to what was put on the plate from Semler? Because Semler definitely, if he was a waiter, he spilt a few drinks on the patrons, didn't he? And that's not what you do, man. That's not what you do. Talk to me. What did you guys have to say with regards to that?
He broke some glasses for sure. That was like everybody's like, "What's that shatter sound?" Oh, party foul. One of those kind of things. But definitely came at some toxic mannerisms that came into it. That's the problem that Kat was leading into as well. Is like, it's kind of he was right. It's just the way he said it was very wrong. Yeah. He did it in a way that he shut down an initiative that might not be a perfect initiative, but it's the one that we've got, and it's one that we're trying to do to make a difference happen, because we got to do something. Right. And all he did was, instead of providing any constructive criticism, didn't provide any other initiative idea that would be better. He's not championing some campaign to actually help the scene. All he did was shut down the one initiative that's happening right now, and did so in a manner that facilitates a lot of toxicity and just further conflict that happens. So the way he did it was just so wrong, in the way he did it, that and what's even worse really is that he just died on the hill of what he did as well. He wasn't like, sorry guys, I said that the wrong way, my bad, wording wasn't good, I apologize, I meant to be like, I want to help the scene, I just don't think this is the best option. He didn't like apologize and come out rephrasing. He's like, nah, screw it, I'm dying today, I'm just going to stand on my ground and I'm going down this ship. I'm not going to admit fault whatsoever, nothing of that sort. And it was just a bad thing on top of another bad thing, and just, it was a train wreck.
Yeah,
it was casualties, fatalities. Yeah, for you, Kat, I think your take, and we spoke about this pre-show, and I want to give you the podium for this as well, because your take is, I think, sincerely the most. It's very sincere. It's so sincere. Please.
So this can get a bit long-winded, so we'll try to be as concise as possible. But the context of this whole scenario is the fact that Valorant has been running the Game Change Initiative, which has been very successful in taking female players and putting them onto professional rosters. So that means they are salaried. That means they can full-time compete in Valorant and focus on that, which props up role models in the scene, which gives space for other players to grow, right? ESL sees that in the CSGO space, says, wait a minute, we could just do this too. because half of the female CSGO players came to Valorant. It's a pretty similar game, and they actually have opportunities there. So of course they're going to come over. So ESL goes, well, let's try to continue to grow what is the CSGO scene, do the same thing with our females, and that's where Semler got mad. So that's how we got here in the first place. I think from him, it's a significant lack of understanding of what this space truly is. Because I think anyone who has the same take as him is only looking at the now and what's going on right now. Yes, to their point, they are correct. Right now, we can't really field an entire roster of female players to compete against male rosters because statistically, historically, it has not gone very well. We can take Fullerton from Frag as an example. C9 White went out in groups. That's a full female roster playing against male rosters. That just is historically, statistically fact, which is okay. But the point of these initiatives are to prop up teams so that not necessarily the 22-year-old woman playing in the chair now, but the 12-year-old girl on Twitch that is seeing that team play, that is seeing them on stage, that is seeing their favorite streamers get into the game earlier. It's the same concept as if you're a musician, you're going to start when you're 2 or 3 in Suzuki violin, and you're going to be better than everybody else at your high school who just started freshman year. You have to get them in and build fundamentals early on. I'm shit at games, but I'm kind of musically inclined.
Come on, man.
And that's because my parents didn't teach me gaming. They taught me music. It's the same concept. There are dads who play with their sons and teach them gaming, and a lot of them don't do the same with their daughters. But having initiatives like this give them a reason to say, hey, maybe they want to try this too. And then we start to build talent from a young age, because that's who we really see become the pros. Like, these initiatives aren't for now. They're for 10 years from now. And I think people from that angle fail to see that.
Completely. And I love the detail that you've gone into that one with as well. For example, Shopify Rebels, you've seen KP really good in the socials and been jumping in to kind of give that slice of life, the experience of female player and kind of the adversities, especially on KP's journey. Not to go too deep into that, you can look into that yourself, but there is a lot of adversity in this scene that is going to be still there from years to come. These initiatives, of course not, it's not going to be a solution. It's not a one-trick solution of, okay, we've got more opportunities, you mentioned, we've got more financial stability that we can offer. But someone put it like this, and this really kind of emphasized what you guys have said already, and Dilly, please definitely get to you in just 1 second, is that 500,000 from ESL, and not to focus on it too much, but the prize pool that's being offered, it's not even that, it's not that much
across multiple events also.
Right. So it's just it's a foot in the door for female esports within CSGO. But Valorant have done so much to surpass that already. And you would mention this in pre-show for yourself too, Dilly. Speak to us. What's your slice of this?
So I definitely want to say, first of all, to go to what everyone has said already, not to call Semler out per se, but the handling of this entire situation has just been a masterclass in how not to use social media, which, for everyone watching, if you're a person using social media, you can look at what he's done and be like, don't do that. But so to counter what Semler's point was to say that this sort of league doesn't encourage or foster growth for female talent, or it does so artificially, we can find 2 real-world examples where people with exponentially more resources and knowledge than people running the Counter-Strike scene found the same solution. So first we want to talk about the chess world, where being a woman in the chess world is extremely hard from a young age. You know, chess clubs are notorious boys clubs where it's extremely hard to get respect as a woman. So that's why we have women's only chess, to make sure that there's a safe place for women's chess players to grow. The second real world example I want to pull on that's much more recent than women's chess leagues is Formula 1 and W Series. Anyone who has been around me talking longer than 15 minutes knows I'm a big Formula 1 fan. And I've been a big fan of the W Series as well recently. It's been running, I think, for about 4 years now. And this is a series that runs parallel to the Formula One Championship, where it has young, up-and-coming female drivers given equal machinery with teams, sponsors, big prize, $1 million prizes on the line. And we've already seen not only has that series gained a ton of interest for women in motorsport, where there previously was none in a completely white male-dominated space, now there is now some growing interest. You see a lot more women getting interested in Formula One, partly as a result of Drive to Survive on Netflix, but definitely series like W Series has an effect on that. And then secondly, you're seeing not just these women in W Series getting more opportunities in motorsport, elsewhere in the World Endurance Championship and elsewhere like the X Series, more women in general are getting opportunities in motorsport because
Right.
a woman can drive a car. It doesn't require, you don't need manly strength to steer it around the track. It's power steering. You know, it's pretty simple. And it's the same deal with esports. It's the same exact deal. It's that it's just a foot in the door. That's all it is. It's literally, you're not taking opportunities away from any male competitor. All those opportunities are there. I promise you. I promise you that. Don't worry about that.
That's a fear thing, though, isn't it? There is that
It
fear that's not, that's not really spoken about enough by males, especially. And I've not even seen a show where it's been approached because I don't want to say it's a dangerous topic, but it's definitely a topic that is a bit spiky. It could be a bit abrasive if it's not approached with the right way, as seen on socials just a couple of days ago by anyone who has touched esports. But from female esports, I would like to move forward from that because not to be beat to death, but I'm sure everyone has seen an abundance, thousands of tweets on that. We just wanted to touch base and address because it's a very big thing right now. And 2022, we can all agree, and hopefully everyone that's watching can agree with us as well. It is going to be a massive year for esports next year, and most certainly for female esports. We've gone through like 2 years of Valorant. We've had the game change. We've seen so many teams grow, flourish from what we've seen so far. It's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I last thing I just wanted to say on it is from ESL's point of view, handling and promoting Counter-Strike, this is the best thing they could have done to compete with game changers. Like anybody can see that CSGO is losing viewership, losing market share to Valorant. This is the best possible thing ESL could have done to reinforce that position.
And maybe a couple of players, not just Nitro, going on their bike. Hey, Jed.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, even from business stance, like you said, generates more eyes back towards your game for sure, but also just for opportunity for players. I mean, it also makes sense that you want to market towards the other half of the population out there, not just men, but also women. I mean, literally the other half of the world. And like what Kat was saying as well, just kind of summarizing this topic of like looking at your parents as people bring you in. Some people, if parents aren't into video games, then they look to heroes and idols, things like that. Some CSGO players probably look at guys like Shroud or Simple, or some like the crazies out there. League of Legends player probably look at like Doublelift and Bjergsen and stuff. But you need somebody to look towards, and you want to like be the next one, And female sports, as Dilly was referencing, other sports that are not just video games. Also like things out there like Danica Patrick, who's a NASCAR driver. Everybody's like, she got in there and competed with guys, like I want to be the next Danica Patrick. So the entire new generation want to be race drivers for females. And then like Ronda Rousey would be a name that just you're like instantly hear Ronda Rousey fighting MMA. Whole generation of girls who want to get into MMA and they're looking to be the next Ronda Rousey or Chris Cyborg, things like that. So just creating like heroes and idols now would generate a better generation of competitive female gamers later on as well. So it's just starting waves. You guys start somewhere, stepping stones, and even though 500,000 across an entire year of different events might not be like, oh wow, what an amazing prize pool, it's still like this is a start. Like that's better than the nothing that was there before. And then the next year, 2023, would probably be even better from there. So we just got to start somewhere, and this is it.
This is the starting block, isn't it? It's the starting block of the race, and who is going to win that race? Yeah, it is going to be generations from here and here to go forward. And I love that you mentioned that, Kat, as not to single you out, but to really give that respect to you as one of the youngest people on our show right now, or the youngest person, I should say. you're seeing light years ahead, and you're seeing the opportunities that are far to come, and that's really exciting. And yeah, it's nice to see some level heads in the community trying to look out for that. There needs to be more people that have that mentality, and the more people that there are that surface and are willing to voice their opinions on that, the easier it gets to tackle such a problem in the industry right now, where there isn't that balance. And definitely the balance in the esports force is on its way. About darn time. Yeah. From that to move forward to the T1 versus the T2 teams in the industry. So we've talked to the female-only events, but for the T1, T2, there's so much to talk about here because it's been a very, very interesting week. And in particular, upsets. We saw a couple of upsets the week before. We're like, oh, there's a couple of upsets. But for this, it's got a step further. And I want to ask something for you guys here. With regards to T1 and T2, what defines a T1 or a T2 team? I'm gonna let you guys go for it. What defines a T1 or a T2 team?
Does anybody know in Valorant specifically? I think you know what T1 is in any other game. I don't think you know what T1 is in Valorant unless you're saying it's specifically the teams that are locked in by Riot's rule that they can only compete in Riot sanctioned events. For me, that's the only clear distinguisher between T1 and T2 teams in this scene specifically.
Well, that really is the distinguisher. I mean, the Riot ruling is what? VCT closed qualifier, qualified teams can't play amateurs. So that would separate them from the amateurs. Bam, done.
Yeah. But what's crazy about that is that that definition doesn't work elsewhere. This is like an artificially created definition in this ecosystem specifically.
So young.
Correct.
Yeah, it's so young.
Is.
And traditionally, it's semi-pro versus pro would be tier 2 versus tier 1. But like, pro is also like you're professionally playing the game. You're sustaining yourself off the salary of the team. So a lot of times we don't know which teams actually would be a pro because we don't know the salaries. So which players are like actually working on the side or not. We're not diving into the life that deep, and most people will keep that hidden. So we don't really know what would be a pro team. Pro players versus semi-pro, which would be like side job kind of salary essentially. So yeah, it's hard to really know, and that's part of why it's been so ambiguous. Is a lot of people also look at tier 1 level organizations, but then you have people like Evil Geniuses that are like another like Dota 2 and CS:GO are like tier 1 level, like fighting games as well. And then you go League of Legends is pro level. And then they go to Valorant and they're like not doing well even in the tier 2 scene that people consider to be tier 2. And it's like, okay, so they tier 2 team from a tier 1 org, and that gets confusing to say those things. So basically we're basically saying, as far as I know, like that's what I refer to it as, tier 1 teams are ones that are like VCT qualifications and fighting for international plays and things like that. Tier 2 are teams that don't get into that level and are playing the like weeklies and monthlies instead.
Yeah, I don't think we get
No, please go on.
A true organized T2, T1 system until we get past what has been our open qual circuits into an invited team circuit, in the sense of any other major esport in which you've got the same consistent teams, same consistent rosters, repeatedly coming back to the ecosystem. Because the first year competitive was grassroots, let third-party tournaments handle it. Riot finally said, okay, we have some scraps to work with here, we can pick it up. I think this year will be another sort of the same scraps. But what it looks like for this format is the end of the year is supposed to be a true amateur tournament to build talent. And then I really feel like at the start of not next year, but the year after, which is what, 23? I can't do math. Yeah, 23. I think at 23, we'll start to get a true tier 1 scene, because then I think we'll get invited teams. But this year, I think it'll be another everyone is anyone, and I think we'll see a ton of upsets.
And that's a perfect segue. Absolutely the best. And you didn't even know it was coming, because I want to go through a little breakdown of what we have seen from NSG Fullerton, what you've seen from NSG Philly the weekend just gone, to really emphasize those points. And now you've given a definition, and just to give my overview of what I think you would define a T1 versus a T2 team in another esport. It is money, right? It's getting paid. You're on the payroll for EG. You're on the payroll for Renegades. And talking of Renegades...
Are you on the payroll for Rise, maybe?
Maybe for us. Maybe for us. And,
100%. They've qualified too.
NSG, Renegades, they got smoked. They got absolutely smoked on all accounts over at the MGA Dragon Cup for MSI. They got smoked as well. And that is what I know of, a paid team. Fair. They did have one player on trial, okay, throughout the duration of the Dragon Cup. That's something to bear in mind, but that's someone with experience. So just stomach that. They got taken out by like on the way esports, and X-Ranty Black took Fullerton. Philly was taken out by on the way as well. And there's so many pug rosters that are just kicking in these salaried rosters. So what does that mean? And I like that you mentioned, Kat, the recruiting portion. I think the year 2 and 3 for what we have in front of us for going towards that 2023 season, it is just going to be who is deserving, who has the talent, who has that clutch factor to be signed. And the players that we see now in T1, I don't know, and I'm not trying to be savage here, but I'm going to say this hot take. I do not know if that Renegades roster, if that TSM roster, what's left of it, by the way, RIP, is going to be around when we go into 2022, 2023, right?
Cold.
So what's your guys' take on that? Do you think we're going to have a lot of switch-ups from these T1 teams going into 2022, where people that didn't pull up the results this year are going to get washed and given away to the Sharks? What's going to happen?
That's all we've had. How long was Harmful's contract? Wasn't it 3 days?
3 days.
That's all we've had, bro. All we have is just roster changes. It's rough right now. T1 orgs just, they have no pay. Like T1 orgs, not T1 teams, T1 orgs, like organizations that we know have money and can afford players.
Dude.
Like it's this instant gratification method right now of like this roster's not getting results. Okay, we're done. It's the fact that why do they keep polling one person, bro?
Just one.
Like,
you're the problem.
You just mentioned so many teams that have upset that are good and consistently play together. Why are we still polling one person? It makes zero sense. Just take the whole damn team.
Period. Like that's
just take them all.
And the roster changes are happening so frequently that it's becoming like a mockery on Twitter lately.
We can't make a T2 roster.
Dropping the contract GIF, and they're just like getting signed somewhere, guys. And like Dapper and Tens and like Zekin are dropping out there. Some guys bought Dignitas jerseys with their name on it from their shop, and they're like, "I got signed." People are like, did you? I don't know.
Dude, did you see Keg's tweet, bro? It was so sweet. He
like,
was
even
so
the
nice.
casters that are established in the scene that have a good idea what's going on are also being fooled because roster changes happen so often that when people are clearly joking about it, we're like, maybe this is true. I don't know anymore.
I'm crying because that's been me this week. I have looked over. I've had to do research. I've had to do sub-thread reads on the VLR and the Spike to be like, is that real life or am I tripping? What's happening? Brutal. I'm getting memed on here, guys.
It's bad.
Yeah, I'm in a DM of like a bunch of observers and casters in the scene, and they drop that in there, and they're like, did this just happen with the Zekin going into Dignitas post, which is kind of like the one that kind of started off the chain of it, because that kid's a memer. And
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm confident that's not true, but I can't 100% say it's not true. So I like do my own research, like, really, is it not? I'm pretty sure this is not the case, because there's no word of Dignitas doing like another roster, because they're focusing on their female roster right now, and other esports out there, and I'm like, there's no word whatsoever this happening. This isn't true. It's not happening. There's no way. So
I mean, you would think that teams would start to learn from the examples of the teams that are in the rosters that are actually leading the way in their respective scenes. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when we talk about this, because literally the team that just won the biggest event of the year, they stuck together. They didn't have any roster swaps through multiple events.
This can't be true. This can't be true. They didn't put together the best players in that month and just go for it. You mean to tell me that they had
out
team
miraculously?
cohesion? No,
instantly had crazy team synergy.
There's no way.
Which is another big problem with tier 2 scene, especially if we're going to jump into that element of like why it's so wishy-washy of results. Like you said, like all these upsets are happening for Kappa, that like Renegades losing their Radiance and losing to a Pug roster, and Sonics is losing it to a Pug roster as well. On the way isn't like, it's kind of a Pug roster. I don't know. It's not a high-end roster. That's all I'll say. Sonics on paper, Sonics should not have lost to On the Way. That's all I'm going to say. All right. And then like, it's just a bunch of like very mixed results. Like EG lost at VMS recently and stuff like that too. You guys were the ones casting that grand finals, and that was 100% to like a Pug roster. Like these players are going onto these rosters a lot of times from just hype around the name and context networking, but they are very talented, obviously. But why is it always so wishy-washy back and forth? Largely because the roster changes, so like they don't really know each other's team synergy well enough yet. And then they go into these matches and they're just like taking scrappy fights. They're just going and like drive 50-50 swings. They're just guessworking onto angles. They're not properly proactively creating issues. And it's a trickling effect from what we saw of like everybody's looking at Sentinels as being like this big flagship team of North America. So majority of people like Sentinels are the best in the world, right? Let's do what they're doing. What are they doing? And that's basically what Sentinels does. They're just so freaking individually talented, and Shazam is so good at in the moment shot calling that they just made it work miraculously. And then they go against teams that like, especially in EMEA, that have been so like grinding all of these strats and stuff like that, like Extend and Gambit, and they're proactively creating opportunities. They're systematically executing on sites or clearing angles and very methodical methods, and they're doing it in a way that's like statistically going to give them more advantages than other teams. And teams that are going in a little bit more scrappy, like Sentinels, are getting creamed because they're not the ones creating the advantages for themselves. They're reacting and trying to capitalize on opportunities created by issues and like errors that other teams deal with. I mean, the higher up you go, you're seeing that highlighted from like international play, but that's what we're seeing domestically as well. As tier 2 teams, a lot of them just playing reactionary to each other, trying to just make individual options happen, not properly executing on sites, and a lot of that goes in scrim culture as well, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but, man, I'm opening up a lot of cans of worms, but
you've opened like all of them at the same time. That's good.
Whatever you want to take a direction from this,
Pick
man.
one of those.
Pick one of those things. At the end of the day, I just think it comes down to not good enough teamwork, coordination, strategy, execution.
Yeah.
Pick a card, any card. What card you picking, Kat?
You fly back to your initial point of like teams just getting thrown together and thrown apart. It's like Nemo, bro. Like literally come down, take the fish out the water, and then put it back when you don't like it. Literally, repeatedly, I feel like. And then like we have examples of teams that have actually stick together. And this is why initially on your transition, I hit you with, would you consider Rise a salary team? As Rise plus Curry went on their way. They went on down to the Fullerton NSG event.
Yes,
they made it to finals, as well. We would hope they would. They're an entire T1 roster. And who did they lose to in finals? Who took them down?
2-0.
Serenity Black, who have been together since August.
Yeah, since what would be eons in the Valorant T2 scene, right? And from what we've just been talking about.
A lifetime.
That's a couple of lifetimes.
Neon's not even on that team anymore. Neon just filled with the boys, basically. So like he's on a crew these days.
Yeah, so we can't even like give the cop out to Rise of like, okay, they had 4-1. So did Serenity Black. It's the same scenario. It's 4 core and 1 fill, and you still lost.
Consistency is key, and teamwork, as we're seeing, and all puns intended, it makes the dream work. It most certainly does, and we're not seeing enough of that in NA from what I've just understood from what the lads have just mentioned. Also, one of the million cans of worms you opened there, Chad, which is why I love you, why you're on this show, because you're providing so much content. And
just gotta wrestle me in, Kappa. We talk about everything.
Bring him in. I did bring it in, and there's one point that I do want to highlight from what you mentioned, and I'm as excited as you are for this one. Is the problem in NA that there's so many like tournaments available where, for example, the Canadian NGA Canada Dragon Cup, the MSI Cup just gone, there was Canadian only teams, you have 1 American player per team. Okay, off of that you've got players from Gen G, got like player 1 in there as well. You've got GMD, you've got Michael, you've got some crazy players that were taken out by a player from Pioneers. I'm talking of Plix, I'm talking of Jerk, you're talking of Moose from LG. Pug teams on pug teams. That's good because they got some money, right? It keeps the ecosystem going. There's lots of opportunities. But my question to you guys, is it dangerous to the NA teams? And the reason that they're failing on the big stage, going back to why we can't match up to the teamwork of EMEA, because we're too focused as an NA community on these smaller prize tournaments that might keep you afloat for a couple of months as a player, as you're not getting those T1 opportunities. Are you getting too much into pug mentality? Is that NA's problem right now because of all these cash cups and all of these teams that are so divided, and the also like, hey, no problem, go do that pug tournament, and they come back to their roster and they just suck? Like, what's going on?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that everybody who doesn't make the VCT circuit is playing those events, which will, make the divide a lot bigger when they start playing amongst many rosters. I mean, like, even through, because we all have been through the VCS, seeing teams and players fill every single week, that does definitely start to play a role and starts to make you play more into ranked mentality. And but then for those teams that are in the circuit, definitely not, because all they're playing is the circuit. And that's interesting to consider, because I forget who said it, but some big brain individual on Twitter brought up the fact that with this format, it's literally like the first open qualifier, and then if you don't make it, that's it.
Months.
GG.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's
I have a
brutal.
lot I want to say about that, because I like that idea, Cuppa, of like, is there too many tournaments? But I haven't heard from Dilly yet, so I want to pick his brain first before I get into it.
Spit
I think
the language of love. What's going on? What do you think for this?
I think everybody's making really good points, which is why I've been kind of absorbing everything. But what I think is really interesting is what we're talking about right now has been talked about for NA esports for as long as I've been
10
paying
years.
attention to esports. So clearly there's some sort of endemic problem that's happening within the NA esports ecosystem that is really inhibiting team performance on the international stage. It's League of Legends, it's Counter-Strike, and now it's Valorant, where it's NA is stumbling at these big international events, and what it comes down to every time is the failure of team play and the failure of team cohesion and the reliance on roster swaps and the reliance on star players to drive a team towards success. Yeah. You say tens, I could say Bjergsen, you say, you say JDM, I could say double lift, whoever it may be. And so that's what's so crazy to me. Is we keep seeing the same movie. I kind of touched on this last week, but it keeps coming up because it's like we're living in the Twilight Zone, and it's just the same thing over and over again. But we can't figure out what the issue is, and I think really the problem boils down to, unfortunately, is how the T1 organizations are handling these rosters. I think part of that then influences how T2 teams make decisions. I think T1 organizations like Renegades, if you want to touch on Evil Geniuses, you can even put Pioneers, TSM in the same category with TSM Academy and things like that. And T2 teams see this and think, well, they are, making these changes for one-star player. Let's make our change for one-star player. But then if you look at the top of the T2 scene, it's Radiant who's been together. Well, it's Radiant. If you talk to me right now, it's Radiant and a crew. And it's Radiant who have been together since July. It's a crew who've been together since, I think, August, if not longer. Longer than that. Yeah, longer than that. And so it's crazy to me that we see the top of not just the Valorant scene as a whole, not just Ascend, but also at the top of lower, tiers of Valorant. It's the teams that have stuck together the longest and have the most synergy that we're seeing rise to the top. But yet, every single time what we're seeing North American tier 1 teams struggle with is this cohesion problem, is this teamwork problem. So I think really right now it's coming down to the organizational standpoint, and it's on the North American T1 orgs to look at what EU is doing, what Korea is doing in terms of handling their teams.
I love that. I love that you've got into that point, and I do want to hear from you in a sec as well, Chad. But yeah, is it the coaches' fault? Are the coaches just being like, "Hey, man, just go out and frag"? That's not coaching. And you go to Sentinels and you talk of the coaching staff that were brought along for their recent champions, right? As an example of, not there to give us strat, just there to hype us up. Hype man is important. I remember that statement coming from your mouth, Chad. And to give it back to you, is it beyond coaching? Like, why are NA failing? Talk to me. What's going on?
I don't even want to throw blame at Raucus either. I think that's more of like a entirety of the team issue in that situation.
Agreed.
And I think there's some like pretty good coaches out there, but I think culturally, I have heard from a lot of coaches that a lot of teams go into scrims just playing to win and not to actually practice and improve as a team. I think a big part of that problem is the fact that they're playing so many tournaments, which is I like that point you brought as like a topical thing. Is like there's so many permits happening and so many roster changes are happening that teams kind of have to go into a scrim to play to win to see if they can actually succeed at all before they go into the thing. So like they don't know if they can actually succeed at all as a team. They don't know if they can work together at all in a live environment before they go into a tournament. So they go into scrims playing that way. But you see other teams like Gambit, they did like 1,100 scrims or practice sessions in the year, which is like roughly 3 a day. And they're like the same roster the whole year. Ascend, same roster for a very long time. And you're seeing the success of teams that are together for a very long time that allows them the opportunity and freedom to go into scrims knowing, okay, we know we can perform on the day. We know we can work out well together. So what we're going to do in these scrims is practice ways of working together better. We don't care about winning the scrims. We don't want to just get destroyed in these scrims. Obviously, like you're playing to win the round, right? But like the goal isn't like they don't have the mentality of we fail the scrim if we lose the game. They fail the scrim if they didn't learn new strategies, they didn't learn new executions, they didn't shore up some mistakes, things like that. That's when you fail at a scrim. Whereas NA, the mentality is we fail a scrim if we lose the scrim. That's what I'm getting from coaches in the scene. Obviously, I don't play it, so I have to get it from them as a secondhand information. But it's something that I think is culturally an issue as well. And like ranked, we see a lot of people just throwing ranked games and just being like completely just like raging and wasting time in ranked. So the ranked culture is a little bit lesser. That's what we saw in like League of Legends as well, which I'll throw a lot of throwbacks to League of Legends knowledge because that's where I come from as a scene. And that's the same problem with 5v5 team-based strategy game of MOBA as well as a tactical FPS. And NA has that issue, just like Dilly said. And in NA, a lot of times that everybody's been saying is like NA players just aren't as good because they don't take ranked play seriously enough. So therefore their skills mechanically aren't up to speed when they go against people like in China and South Korea. And then also they have the same issue. A lot of coaches in North American LCS talk about how teams have a bad mentality going to scrims. They waste a lot of time. So we go into Valorant and we're seeing a lot of the same thing. A lot of wasted time,
same behavior,
not very productive. And then in ranked play, a lot of people aren't taking it seriously. So mechanically not getting as good as they need to be. Team-based are not getting as good as they need to be. And I think the multitude of tournaments might add to that flame, though I don't think it's the base issue. I don't think those like the coals and the logs that started the fire, but that is some twigs and branches that are getting thrown in the flame to keep it going.
I do think it's some sticks on there. And great points, man. And I love hearing your insights as well from having your pulse on everything that's going on for the coaching staff too. Really nice to hear those insights. Kat, have you got anything to add before we head to the rendezvous?
Yeah, let me hit you with a slightly different viewpoint. And it's something that we brushed on last episode, particularly from Chad, but we didn't get into it. And we got a little bit of extra time, so it'd be kind of nice to get into it. Do you think the issue is the country itself? Because I think NA, well, not even culturally, I think NA economically has bought into esports faster in terms of sponsorships, which means that third-party organizers have more money, which means that we have more tournaments, which then if you're an organization, you go, I need to field the roster to go win all these tournaments. So you do need that mentality of I need a roster right now. I need to take stars right now. I need people that have big socials that will get me big engagements that will sell me more money. Do you think the fact that we like our country is all about making as much money as possible and controlling your own destiny is the reason why we see teams and players have that mentality?
No. Think about this real quick.
Not at all?
I think about it. I think you're 100% right, and I'll tell you exactly why really quickly. Is because almost I would say, I'm actually comfortable saying this. Every tier 1 organization except Team Solo Mid is almost, if not entirely, propped up by investor capital. There is insane pressure for return on that investment and to get that return on investment as quickly as possible. And that is exactly what fuels the attitude that Kat is talking about right there, is that right now, instant gratification, we need the big stars, the big hits, whatever's going to make this tournament work. Do you think we need a new guy? Do we need, we see the best offer over here. If we give you guys $5 million to buy him, will you guys win this tournament maybe? The coach says yes, so let's go for it. That is completely fueling this mentality, and it's completely unsustainable. And what I'll end with is we are very much at risk of seeing an exodus of these tier 1 orgs from propping up these tier 2 rosters, because the return on investment is not there. But Chad, I think you had something contrary I think you wanted to say.
Yeah, I don't agree at all. I can understand your like where you're coming from from the Valorant perspective on that topic, but since we're seeing the exact same issues in Valorant as we do in League of Legends, then there must be a commonality that's causing this to happen in North America. Because in League of Legends, they're paying bigger salaries for international players to come in, not for domestic, which is the opposite of Valorant. And in League of Legends, they paid like millions of dollars for perks coming over EU. They paid millions of dollars for Sword Art to come over from Southeast Asia. They're paying millions of dollars for players internationally that would be just a few $100,000 tops domestically, the same results as if they got domestic talent typically. And a lot of that is because of skill base isn't good enough, and domestically the entire culture in A is focused more on limelight, fame, not so much on we need to get our heads down and like dig it out and grind it out. So like stream culture, content creation culture, and then just like popularity focus, things like that. Instant gratification, I do agree, is a problem for sure. And that's something that could be pressured by big time orgs. But like, if you know anything in the scene, you'd know that like we can't just get instant results out of nowhere. It's like
but what you're saying there's something continually the same about what's happening with all of these teams across these different esports. What is the same is who the organizations are and who's
managed by. Yeah, it's definitely not coaching staff. Coaches know that your players have to mesh. Like, and the answer I want to take you to is CLG, League of Legends. Do you remember the Bud Light cooldown? Do you remember that video, Chad? Do you remember where they told the entire roster they were getting fired live? Why would you bring this up?
Bud Light Ace.
That is the perfect example of a T1 organization saying, you guys aren't working fast enough after that roster had already gotten thrown together. And then they put it to make money for content. So we're going to throw the sponsor segment here and let you know we're also getting rid of you at the same time. And we know for a fact the management or the coaching staff wasn't hype on that. But the management, and we know Madison Square Garden from Insider Talks, aren't super hype as a management company. That's entirely on them. That had nothing to do with the organizational staff.
Yeah,
I can't believe that even happened. That was
I love watching that.
If you want to cry watching a League of Legends video, watch
so funny.
CLG cut members of their roster during the Bud Light cooldown.
And hey, it's a promotion. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah, it was an ad. That sums it up perfectly.
Man. They were doing like in team comms, and I don't think the team really knew that was happening at the moment. They was like,
no point.
And they're like,
but they were just filming it.
To be that moment that they're just trashing their players, which is so unlucky. I think it could be an issue with a lot of orgs, but like I hear insider knowledge from people who've worked with organizations directly. Kat, you and I were talking to a guy recently, and there's a lot of orgs that are really good at knowing like, okay, we need to work with these guys. Some orgs like Team Liquid have a ton of money. They're like the Yankees of esports, it feels like. And they're really good at just throwing money and getting the best roster out there. But even still, in EU, Team Liquid had like one roster change. And that roster change was adding a player who was a brother of an already existing player.
Not a professional.
Yeah.
Like, they brought him in, and he's like already a brother of the guy. Like, they know they're going to be working together. Let's get into work. Let's practice. We don't need a scrim to play to win or anything like that. Let's go. And they practiced it out, and they still made it pretty far. And then, like, and LCS is literally just the most talented players they can possibly find and throw all the money at them. So obviously they're going to find success. But Cloud9 is another team that finds a lot of success, and they're also a team that doesn't often make insane roster changes. They do, of course, still do that. We see that in LCS and in Valorant, but they are one of the more stable teams out there, and they are definitely doing something that is finding consistent success internationally as an organization. CSGO, the NA team that won the major. LCS, they're the teams that make it to like quarters and semis and worlds. Other
Right.
teams fail to make it out of groups.
Right.
And Valorant for champions, they're the ones that made it out of groups. So whoever
Because they're run better.
You know what the
the org
difference
is
is?
run better.
You know what the
I
difference
think
is?
for me, go on, Kat.
Dilly's right. The org is run better because the org makes money off of brand deals with merchandise and streamers. They don't make money on their esports team.
They're probably
It's
right there with
entirely
TSM.
on the structure of the organization and where the revenue comes from. They understand that their esports team don't make money. Esports doesn't make money, it's advertising. And that is like
Not
what
alone.
it boils
no.
down to.
That's facts. And I think
what it
everybody
boils
should
down
know
to.
that going into it. Like I don't even work
It's
for a
crazy
team,
they
I know that
don't.
from the outside. And it is wild. It does seem like
Crazy.
some people don't really get that, but they should.
It's supply,
Like, that's
it's supply and demand, right? It's simply supply and demand. That going summarizing all of your points and kind of to the answer to the questions that you guys have pretty much said everything that was on my mind to do with it anyway. But they need to make money. You're right. It isn't just sponsors alone. They need to make money from tournaments, but the focus is too much on the individual. It's too much on egos. It's too much on do I look good in this t-shirt versus how do I look in the server. And with that, that is why the NA scene has I won't want to say it's decaying because we've got so many talented individuals, and I think single-handedly more individualistic talent in NA than any other region, based on playtime, based on ranked, like out the yin yang, just endless
sure.
ranked. But Shroud mentioned something, and I want to bring this to light as well. A long time ago, Shroud said playing unrated and an abundance of versus playing ranked can start to decay your game sense. It can decay the way that you play. And I think to your point and what you said as well, Kat, that premise of playing too much ranked and focusing maybe not on your training, focusing on what others think of you is why at NA, when they go to the big stage, they're not ready. They're not prepared for that big stage moment. And on top of all those social pressures of you're sponsored by this, you're sponsored by that, it just makes it that much more difficult. And at first, I think my opinion as a fan was, this is why are these teams not stepped up to play? They've got experience, they've got this, they've got that. But when you break it down to the fundamentals, and as you said, Chad, the sponsors don't make money. They simply don't. That's not where the money's made. It's made from within the players doing well. Something's got to change, or I think we're going to have some problems in NA to go in the future.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I said sponsors don't make money, but they definitely
It's not the primary source, sorry.
they
to
want
expand upon
the
that.
money. Yeah, that's definitely the focus is money, for sure. And they want money now, just like any capitalist business wants.
Dude, I want
Not
money
a
now.
lot of
You
people
got
are
me?
down.
Me
Yeah,
too,
I mean,
same.
Come on,
a
brother.
lot of esports is should be looked at as an investment for teams. Money making avenues should be elsewhere, like Kat said, for like merchandise and things like that. If you're doing content things for teams, don't rely on your players to like have to grind out hundreds of hours of streaming a month. Instead, have them like just go and do this one big content thing for the team. All right, move on. They can go back to practicing. Like, don't have them like distracted by like if they're focusing on streaming a lot, then you'll probably see what happened in TSM.
Such a sad story.
Down
Such a
bad.
sad story indeed. I saw Waddle streaming today, and you know what? He is not the sack of energy that he was at the beginning of the year. That's been a testing time for him, man. I really do feels bad, man. It really does feel bad. Talking of not feeling bad, talking of feeling good, I'm going to be forward to the rumor rendezvous for all of you. And I'm completely do this off the cuff, right? Going to completely just go with what we've been hearing down the grapevine. For me, it's a safe option. It's the changes. We've got Yoru. I've raved about Yoru. I love Yoru. I haven't played with Chad or Kat, actually, but I'd love to be Yoru in a game of yours. Changes coming down the
please
grapevine.
Don't let him do it.
Yeah, I'm
Don't
not
do
playing
it.
with you.
Come
I'll
on,
play
guys.
my
Don't
alt.
let him do it.
I'll use my alt. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, don't
No one
do
likes
that to me.
Yoru. Will you like Yuri when the changes come in? And there's a new agent coming down the grapevine as well. So that's the rumors that I've heard. Yuri
Agent
changes
19.
2022, and the Filipino agent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
is,
Heck yeah.
Yes.
pretty cool, man. Pretty exciting.
My
stuff.
sister's Filipino. I told her about that. She's like, "Oh, sick." She's not a gamer at all, but she's
Still
excited
love
about it.
He is now.
Heck yeah. For rumors, can I talk about the one that looks really interesting to me, which would be something that's
I
not so.
guess.
This week was a little rough.
You're gonna do
because
it, so
all the baits were happening that I'm like,
Yeah, it was hard.
which one's a rumor I can actually talk
which
about?
One's real. You know which one's real.
But I know which ones are looking real for sure. Because research and time investment.
And just
so
other
Cryocells, who is a notoriously demon in ranked play, and also a player who's consistently performing at the top level for their team on Soar, is looking to go over to XSet to replace Pure. Pure is somebody who was the Jet main. Cryocells a Jet main, so it makes sense that that's the person that they replace. And also makes sense that they look to replace Pure because he's overall performed about average overall.
Yeah, he's like Dicey, if you will.
Yeah, it's kind of like Dicey, where like he's performing pretty average, but like he's not so well as like we have to keep him here. And you obviously would look to make some change happen because XSet did have a consistent roster for like the second half of it once they added like Zekin in kind of deal and Def. And they locked in for a while and they're like, okay, we're doing pretty good. And going into the new year, this would be the best time to make a change just before
100%.
like right now in December, early January would be the time. And Cryo is just somebody who's just so freaking talented mechanically and just pops off constantly. And I would give credit as like the MVP of Soar as far as showing up on the numbers at the very least. Who knows about comms, all that kind of stuff. But as far as the numbers go, Cryo looks to be the MVP. So going into XSet to replace Pure, who's the person who's kind of been falling off on the scoreboard, Jet main and going negative about half their games, not really good look. Zekin is outperforming him overall and not even main duelist role, so that's kind of like a bad look as far as like frag department. So bring in Cryo, who would be a fragger on Jet and it would be performing a lot better than Pure. XSet's going to look a lot stronger going into 2022.
And that's that duelist pressure, isn't it? Right? As a gamer in Valorant, you've got so much pressure to put up those numbers, especially as a Jet. You've got no excuse. Sure, there's been some changes, but that's a high pressure role. I think now, debatably, one of the most like high pressure roles in the game, being a good Jet.
Yeah, we perform.
Gotta
get those kills, or you're looking bad.
Got to hit the knives, man. Got to hit those headshots. For you, of course, for Kat, and of course, Dilly. What's the rumors you've heard? What's something you're on about?
You first, alphabetical order.
Yeah, pretty consistent.
He was going first anyway.
We've been hearing Teal from a couple sources are being scouted by Faze. The initial report about a week ago was Faze is going to pick them all up as the academy roster, to which I said, please don't do that, because some of them are very old. Well, not very old, but very old for gamers, to the sense of you're going to ruin their whole career. Please don't sign them to 2 year contracts. And then we got a new report that was like, well, maybe we won't take them all, but we'll take Flya to the main roster. And I said, okay, yeah, you can do that. So we'll see.
Negotiated that with you specifically. They were like, all right, we'll just take Flya.
I told him, I said, please.
Kat, you're a wise man.
Well, the rumor Rendezvous is really heating up this week, I gotta say.
I don't love it because Teal is honestly, well, maybe it's good for them actually, because they really do. They're so good at instantly finding more young talent the moment they lose players. Like 7 went to 100 Thieves, instantly got replaced. So I don't think it'll be an issue for them. And they're honestly proving to be a very good free agent farm team to go to high organizations, and they're being very credible for that. So, okay, go crazy. Especially if 7 ends up moving up into that main roster slot, and then Fly moves up as well. Like, that's our boys. Our boys are cold. Yeah. They're moving in.
No, I love that move. I love that move for them. I think it's the best thing involved for all parties around. Obviously, depending on what the specifics of the contract look like, no one's going to know that except the players and FaZe Clan themselves. But I say if the bag is there, go and grab it.
As long as it's main roster, I'm chilling with it.
Take what you can get. I would say don't be greedy. Don't be greedy. But
for sure,
maybe some bags coming a couple people's ways. If the rumors are to believe, Jake Lucky leaving esports talk, as well as George Geddes leaving Upcomer. Now, I haven't heard a lot about where they might be going, but is there a partnership that might have been forming? Because the timing was really interesting, and the wording, I would say specifically the wording of, I don't want to be like psycho analyzing too much, but the wording of Jake Lucky's tweet was kind of like a little sus. He was like, it wasn't like, hey, I'm not going to be working with esports talk anymore, great guys, peace. He was like, I am not with them.
I thought he got fired.
It's like, oh, maybe, yeah. Like maybe it doesn't sound mutual. It doesn't sound mutual. Whatever it was.
Too much, maybe. Like
I can't. No. I mean,
he's such.
If he's getting fired, I have to question what the motivation for
face of
esports
esports
talk
talk.
Yeah,
is.
Jake is big enough to not
Everyone
need
who
that now.
responded to his tweet, said, "I thought you were esports talk." So that doesn't really.
I'm gonna be honest,
Basically,
I
Literally,
thought-
everyone responded saying that. So yeah, it's crazy, but I think it's really interesting. I'd like to see the two of them together because that's kind of got the potential to be a meme dream team.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
There's definitely two options there. It's either there's a new media outlet that's about to get created, or the Score saw Upcomer and said, "Please stop stealing our viewership," and is just stealing the journalist back. It's
Or
one the
G4
other.
too. Could be G4.
G4 is an interesting
IGN?
opinion.
Maybe
I'd love.
But
I'd
IGN has
love, I think.
Keg. They don't need anyone
they
else.
do, but they're expanding as they're going forward,
Yeah,
right? They
I
get more
think-
content. Good point.
I think Jake Lucky specifically would be a great ad for G4. I don't think George
That's really
fits
interesting.
their kind of content, but I think Jake Lucky would be
Yeah.
a great bridge for G4 into esports, which literally doesn't
Yeah.
exist right now.
And that's like
Yeah, I
that's
think that
literally
actually
what
would
it
be a
does.
good
That makes
call
a lot of
before.
sense.
Man, that's
Yeah,
some
he
food
fits the
for
brand
thought.
really well. Nice.
Yeah,
Really
like
interesting.
poster boy.
Before you can thank me later.
Nice.
Close your eyes. You can
Huge.
see him wearing the jersey. Huge indeed. It has been a slice for me. I'm going to be signing myself at least off from the Instalock Duelist. It has been excellent hanging out with you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show as well. Any final words before we send our viewers packing, all 90 of them, to start things off into the
And-
holiday season?
And growing. I gotta say, happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays. Whatever you celebrate, women in esports is a good thing.
100%.
Stop being a
Support
dickhead.
women.
Yeah. No matter
talking
what
about
holidays you
support women.
celebrate, no matter who you love, support women in esports.
Yep.
And if you don't, well, you should probably wake up on the other side of bed tomorrow and figure it out.
You're gonna get coal for the holidays. That's what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
In the
Coal.
if you live in the tropics, you're getting coal. If you live up north, you ain't getting coal. You're gonna stay cold.
Ooh, tell 'em.
Staying cold.
Sheesh.
Cold's actually a sick gift if you live out in the tundra.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like it'd be warm. Thank God I got coal for Christmas.
This is the best Christmas ever. You can't believe you thought of me so personally. Guys, it's been awesome. Have a great holiday season, and we'll catch you in 2022. Laters.